In this video, I'm going to attempt to survive 200 days on my moderately sized island, which is still the only piece of land in this entire world. I have a giant list of projects for the island, including getting all of my tools and armor enchanted. Yes, it turns out there is a way to get enchantments without sugarcane for books. So let's get straight into day 101. So I awoke in our island base, ready to tackle a bunch of new projects, with our first one needing a decent amount of wood, so I got straight to chopping. Now, you might be able to tell that it's pretty laggy at the moment, which was pissing me off. I ended up actually spending an entire real-life day choosing parts for my new PC, picking up the parts and building the whole thing, and here we are back in my world on my new Sigma GigaChad PC. I cried at the beautiful FPS I was now getting, along with admiring the moon until heading to bed. On the morning of day 102, I sought to start our first new project of the 200-day challenge, a fishing pier. This was to be an extension of the existing dock, so I worked on removing part of it and began building the stairs and outlining the building. I also got the corner pillars established, extending those down into the ocean for theoretical stability. Now, I actually had no birch left, and I wanted some for the details of the building, so I went and harvested a couple of birch trees. After the tree chopping, my food reserves were looking quite low, so I went out to the animal farm, bred up all of my animals, and I think you know what happened next. It was also quite late at this point, so I headed off to bed. On the morning of day 103, I continued building my fishing pier by adding some more pillars around, as I felt the corner ones just weren't enough. I started connecting them up at the tops and, of course, ran out of wood, so I went and chopped a bunch more. On the morning of day 104, I finished up the pillars and finally started on the roof, which ended up looking quite weird. I forgot to mention I was actually following this reference image, which had a pretty unique looking roof, which, yeah, ended up looking a bit shit in the end. So now with the main construction of the pier building complete, I went around and added some much needed details, starting with some sticky outy bits on the pillars. This gave us room to slap in some fence details, along with some lanterns to keep the place nicely lit up. I then worked on a gate design to keep mobs out and added some slabs around as a sort of railing. I added another gate on this side, as this was where the boat parking area was to be situated. I built that out and added a U-shape at the end, along with getting assaulted by a dirty little water goblin. I headed back out to the boat docking area to add some fence pillars that didn't touch the bottom of the ocean. Just don't worry about it. Alright, and so that was pretty much everything done. All I did next was add in this cool ceiling design, along with a chair on each side of the pier and some storage and crafting in the middle. Now, the whole reason for this build was for it to be a safe space for me to do some fishing for the next 7 days. There's a 0.8% chance to get any enchanted book from fishing, which was quite a low chance, but I mean, I'll take whatever I can get at this point. I grabbed my 2 enchanted fishing rods from an ocean thingy I explored in the previous 100 days and combined them together to get mending and luck of the sea 1, which actually increases those odds from 0.8% to a whopping 1.2%. I know, it's quite a substantial upgrade, isn't it? Fuck's sake, man, this is gonna take fucking forever. And so I headed down to my new home for the next 7 days and actually replaced half of this bench with a bed for me to sleep on. I then began my fishing journey, casting out into the big wide ocean in hopes of a book swimming up and biting my hook. My first catch came swimming up and it was a salmon. My next cast yielded a cod, and the following actually got us an enchanted bow with power 3. This actually had the same odds of being a book, which looking back pisses me off greatly. After a bunch more casts, I only caught fish, which was quite depressing. It was also only until the next day that I caught something interesting. Oh my god, we just got our first enchanted book. Please be something good. Oh, it's for a fucking crossbow. Are you serious? Dude, if I was an actual crossbow gamer, that would have been sick. Well, we continue, boys. Oh my god, we just got another one. Please, something good. Fire protection 3. Again, that's not really what we wanted. God damn it. Back to it, boys. Okay, I just got a new fishing rod. It's got lure 2 on it, which is actually going to help us immensely with waiting for, you know, fish to come. It's going to help that. It's going to make the fish come a lot quicker. That sounds kind of wrong. So I'm going to quickly head back to my blacksmith here and combine those two together. Hopefully it's not, you know, stupidly expensive. Okay, let's combine those two. 13 levels. You know, we don't really have any other use for our levels, so that's going to be pretty good. Also, yeah, here's our loot from, you know, we're now at day 108. That's all the loot we've got. Oh, I might as well also combine all these freaking bows together, eh? It's going to be expensive as hell. Okay, may as well just combine those together. Dude, look at that bow. That is insane. So we've now got the god fishing rod and the god bow, dude. Hell yeah. Okay, let's get back there and keep fishing. Okay, a couple casts later, we've actually got our first useful book, Efficiency 3. I don't really care about the blast protection, but we can put that on any one of our tools. So I'm glad we've finally got something we can actually use. Well, that is going to be my last cast for now, because it is now almost day 112. I don't want to spend any more time in this crap. I have gotten no more books. Oh my god, I've gotten so many fishing rods. I've also gotten a saddle, a name tag, a tripwire, you know, a bunch of random crap as well, and a crap load of fish. So yeah, out of all of that, we pretty much only got Efficiency 3. That's the only really useful thing that we've gotten. I don't know what I'm going to put it on. Maybe my axe, maybe my pickaxe, I don't know. But I think what I'm going to do now is get started on the next build, which is going to be extending this dock here. And I want to pretty much almost surround the entire island with this dock. So I'm probably going to need to go grab a bunch more wood. And I think, yeah, what I will do is actually create a new axe. And I will probably go ahead and slap that Efficiency 3 on that. All right, so put that in and that. And there we go. We now have an Efficiency 3 diamond axe, our first proper enchanted tool. That's going to make collecting wood a lot quicker and a lot easier. After getting a bunch of wood, I realized we'd need heaps of torches for the dock too, and I was completely out of coal. So I ended up heading down into the mines and thankfully quickly found a bunch of coal. Also, I accidentally turned off the in-game day counter here, so just letting you know it was day 113. After returning home, I crafted up a bunch of torches and grabbed all the stuff we'd need and finally got started on the dock extension. I branched it off of the left side of the existing dock and began extending it around the left side of the island. Getting the shape right was quite difficult and at times needed some revisions, but we got there in the end. While I was building, I was also getting more birch fence pillars established evenly spaced apart along the dock. And if you're wondering, yes, most of these pillars don't touch the bottom of the ocean. I ended up stopping the dock extension towards the top right of the island as I felt that was far enough, and finally added some docking areas pointing out from the dock all the way around. With the dock extension now fully completed, I moved straight onto the next project, a water wheel build, which needed a lot of stone. As for the position, I decided this spot was perfect, so I first got a foundation of cobblestone established that the water wheel building would be situated on top of. Now at this point I'd heard a little noise. And after some further investigating, it turns out Frank had joined our island. Those of you who have watched my Create series will remember this familiar face. I rushed off to grab a name tag, along with of course naming it Frank and giving it to our new island friend. I then got back to work, fully finishing off the foundation. After starting the pillars, Frank had joined us to begin supervising the project, so I felt this build was now definitely in good hands. He told me the existing pillars were in a dog shit location, so I extended the foundation and got them all in a better spot. I then worked on extending those pillars up to a height Frank was happy with and connected them all up together at the tops, and stepping back, it was looking great. I then started playing around with a couple roof designs, along with using the orthographic camera mod to get a look from afar, which was super helpful. I ended up settling on this shape and got it built along both sides of the building. Happy with the final shape, I began filling out the entire roof with oak stairs, along with getting some dormers placed in, which took a little while to get figured out. In the end, I was happy with the overall look and was ready for bed. After trying to go to sleep, there was monsters nearby, and I tracked it down to this annoying spider in the floor. I killed it, filled in the foundation, and heard another one. Once it gave its position away, I quickly opened up the floor and fucking killed it, and then finally drifted off to sleep. In the morning, I finished up the other side of the roof, along with starting on the walls, opting for textured stone and stone bricks. I then got started on the actual water wheel design, which was quite an arduous task. As you can see, there is actually no river here at the moment, as it was actually hidden underground. So while I was building the water wheel, I was also uncovering the underwater river. On day 120, the rain finally stopped, and I of course continued with the water wheel design, extending the spokes on all four sides. With all the spokes completed, I then worked on connecting them up together with some stairs and slabs to complete the actual wheel design. Also, I forgot I needed to strip the logs as well so they matched the stairs and slabs a little bit better. After completing the top portion of the wheel, I stepped back and was pretty happy with the overall design. It still needed a little holder on this side of the wheel, so I extended the logs out and got a little stone holder built and connected it up together. With the water wheel fully completed, I continued uncovering the underwater river, along with bringing the water level up a bit higher to meet the wheel. We now needed a way to get over to the other side, so I just designed a quick little arched oak bridge, which ended up looking quite cute. Turning my attention back to the actual building, I decided on leaving the rest of the walls completely open as I felt it'd look more interesting. I filled in the gaps towards the roof and added some arches under all the pillars in each wall section. I added some interior details with log piles and some storage piles, and then got started on the exterior details right after having an interesting encounter with Frank back at the house. I continued the details along the exterior, adding more supports around the entire building by extending out the foundation and adding stripped logs, stairs, and fences above all of those. Now on day 123, I worked on getting some finishing touches done, like adding some trapdoors around the water wheel. And there we have it, the water wheel build was now fully completed. Diving straight into the next project, we needed a load more oak and birch wood, so I spent about a day gathering as much as I could. With the wood obtained, I scouted out a location to build our giant farmhouse building. We did have a little farming town already established, but I felt it needed another bigger building, and I decided this spot right next to the windmill was perfect. I originally decided on an L-shaped building, but it was just not working out, so I decided to challenge myself and create my first ever diagonal house. It was definitely quite a different type of build that I had basically no experience with, so I was practically winging it. After getting the pillars and the first set of walls completed, it was coming along a lot nicer than I thought it would, and I was pretty surprised at that. I decided on making the second floor stick out one more block as the build was lacking quite a bit of depth, and I felt that'd remedy that perfectly. At this point, I'd also decided on changing the first floor walls from birch to stone and made the second floor birch instead, which I felt looked a lot nicer. I added in a bunch more windows to this top floor as it was kinda hard to add any other type of detail, and then began on the roof, which was definitely the hardest part of this entire build. It took a couple of tries to get the shape and heights right, and in the end, I still feel like the roof is a little bit too mellow. I tried for ages to make a little dormer, but it just wasn't working, so I left it and just added a chimney instead. I filled in these final gaps near the roof, and once they were done, I filled in the ceiling and the floor of the interior using some oak wood. Now with the exterior fully completed and looking awesome, it was time to tackle the interior. The first thing I decided to add was a diagonal staircase, which is possibly the hardest thing I've ever tried to build. I stuck with it, and in the end, yeah, it looks like brain dead dog shit. The next interior design I wanted was some indoor farms, one for wheat and the other for carrots. I tried for ages to make two separate diagonal farm designs, but it just wasn't working, so I gave up and ended up settling on these designs here. I added in the water source in the corner here along with tilling the dirt, getting some lighting established in the ceiling, and finally planted in all of the wheat and carrots. For the final details of the bottom floor here, I decided on getting some indoor house plants built in these corners of the house, and then got some storage established under the staircase. I felt I should balance this out on the opposite side, so I did exactly that, placing in more chests. Heading up to the second floor, we had quite a lot of space to fill, which was definitely going to be difficult. My first idea was a bedroom that'd be in its own actual room with walls, so I cracked out the birch and got all of those walls built up, along with placing in the door. I decided on placing our triple wide bed over on this side of the room, along with a nice bed head of birch logs, a shelf holding some leaves, and a little lantern too. Over on the other side of the room, I filled in some of the walls to have an easier area to work with, and added in a little table to hold a prized stone hoe, along with a painting on the other wall. I then worked on filling in the ceiling and decided this area of the walls was looking like absolute shit. I ended up removing the table and placing in some more house plants with the prized stone hoe in between both of those. It was still kinda shit, but yeah, moving on. For this area of the second floor, I decided on placing in some furnaces with some chests for storage on the other side. I also added some barrels along the top areas for some added detail. I added a bunch of house plants in this corner, which I felt looked pretty cool, and got some lighting established with some fences dangling down from the ceiling into a lantern. I placed in some paintings over on this wall along with a couple of tables holding some leaves. Yes, I was definitely running out of ideas and materials. And for the final finishing touches, I added one more house plant and one more ceiling lantern, and finally the farmhouse was all completed. Moving straight on to the next project, which once again needed more wood, so I first repaired my axe. I then got straight into chopping a bunch of oak trees along with collecting some diorite that we needed for the build. And so this build was actually going to be a much needed upgrade for the animal farm. It was finally going to be made into a nice barn. After working on the pillar placements, I actually needed a little bit more space, so I extended out the island a tiny bit to get that extra land I needed. I also compressed my pathway area over here so I could squish in the pillars a little closer to my main base. I then fixed up all the pillars, getting them to positions I was happy with, and extended those up and connected them all up together. Now onto the roof design, which was to consist of a diorite trim and deep slate for the inner blocks. It took a couple tries to get the shape of the roof right, and in the end I was actually really happy with it. I connected both trims together along the sides and the top, and finally filled in the rest of the roof with textured deep slate tiles and bricks, which was such an awesome combo. With the roof all done, I worked a little bit on this outside portion, getting the pillars positioned a little bit better, and then moved on to the front entrance design for the barn. I wanted that big open barn door look, which I achieved with some oak trapdoors, and topped them off with some extinguished campfires. For the walls, I went with a design that had some big openings with oak fences that I felt worked well, and would help ventilate all the animal farts. After finalizing the back wall designs, I moved on to the outside, getting the gaps under the roofs filled in and extending out the exterior animal pens. I then worked on this cute little roofed area for our animal pens to hide under when it's raining. This turned out to be a huge pain in the ass as I couldn't get it looking right, but we got there in the end. I then spent an ungodly amount of time trying to separate the cows and sheeps until finally giving up. Onto the interior design, I went with a textured coarse dirt and dirt path, along with adding some little separators on the inside to place our shit into. On the left, I went with some hay bales, in the middle a bunch of various storage, and in the final segment, some more hay bales. And after lighting up the build with a bunch of torches, the barn was finally completed. Now on day 138, I got straight into our next project, which once again needed more goddamn wood. After shopping for a while, I returned home, grabbed a bunch of various wood items, and headed out to the spot, which was in the ocean. And that's because we're building a goddamn boat. Now, I absolutely suck at making boats, and honestly, they're really hard to build even in creative, so forgive me for using one of my older builds as reference here. I was definitely tempted to use Lightmatica with that easy place function, but honestly, that shit pisses me off, especially when other creators use it. To me, it just feels wrong to use, like it takes that aspect out of designing the build in survival and kind of ruins it in my opinion. But I mean, I guess I'm kind of doing that right now by following one of my older builds. I just feel that Lightmatica thing makes it too easy. I don't know, maybe leave your opinion on it in the comments, as I'd love to know what you think about it. And so, rant aside, I've basically built the entire boat now, just finishing up with the final sail here. The main deck was looking quite bare as well, so I just sprinkled in some random details like chests and barrels along with some grates in the floor. I actually have one more detail I want to add right here, but I need a piston for it. I was also completely out of coal and iron, so I ran down to the dock after catching Frank chilling out in a boat and set sail out into the ocean in hopes of finding a cave. Stopping off at my first spot, I instantly found a cave which was perfect. I swam down and spotted some coal, which relieved me greatly. I placed down a door for air and began mining away. I ended up finding a second patch of coal which I mined up along with some iron, which was exactly what I needed. I decided to continue exploring, which paid off as I found heaps more coal and iron. After some continued exploration, I found even more iron, which actually had me tearing up a little. It was a great sight to see. I then made my way back out to the boat and admired my island in the night. It was looking beautiful. Waking up on day 143, I smelted up all the iron I'd found on my expedition and crafted up the piston I needed for this final detail. Heading back onto the boat, it was time to build the capstan, which is basically the thing that you wind up the anchor with. I have this awesome design that uses 2 armor stands and finally the piston to push the slab into place. That didn't work, eh? Alright, so thankfully pushing the slab in from the top works and doesn't displace the armor stands, thank God for that. And yeah, so after adding some signs on all the sides, it was all done and looking cool, and in fact, the entire boat was now fully completed. Now, I was definitely still pretty disappointed from my first fishing efforts back at the start of the 200-day challenge, so I wanted to try again, this time spending 10 days in total. I made my way down to the dock, deciding to take Frank with me and place him next to the pier. This ended up actually being a bad idea because he was a noisy ass prick, so I moved his ass back away. And so back at the pier, I started fishing. Day after day, night after night, all I did was fish. All I could see whenever I closed my eyes was fish. Until halfway through on day 149, a wandering trader had spawned in. He actually had something useful for me, a cherry sapling, meaning we could get a new type of wood. I sprinted up to my base, tears streaming down my face until discovering I had no emeralds. I frantically checked every chest in disbelief as I was so excited to finally use a different type of wood, but I had no means of obtaining the sapling. Disappointed, I headed back to the dock to continue just kidding, I of course killed that little shithead and his dumb ass quit ugly little llama things. After getting my anger out, I continued fishing until the 10 days was completed, which would take another 5 days in total. If you're wondering, in real time, the entire time spent fishing was just under 2 hours, quite possibly the most boring 2 hours of my life. And so, with the sun setting on the final day of fishing, I caught my final catch, yet another cod, and headed to bed. In the morning, it was time to showcase the entire haul of the 10 days. We of course got a lot of fish, but we also caught heaps of fishing rods, some absolutely amazing enchanted bows, including one with infinity, and the big reveal, the books. We got 5 in total, with Loyalty 3, Fortune 2, which was amazing, Mending, which was beautiful and had me in tears, and the rest were dog shit. Just before I got to enchanting some stuff, I thought of another build that we should probably do, a bit of a harbour next to our big boat. This was going to need a bunch of stone that I didn't have, so I harvested up a bunch along with some wood I needed too. Starting the harbour, I first had to clear out a decent area because there was quite a bit of sand in the way. I then worked on essentially covering this area of the land in some textured stone and stone bricks to create the foundation of the harbour. I extended this up to the top to create the floor of the harbour, along with clearing out some more land to make it slightly larger. Next, it was time to add in some pillar blocks for detail, along with adding some fences and fence gates between all of those. As for this section where I'd left a gap, I added in a ladder that'd lead down to a little wooden dock that was used for boarding boats, I guess. I felt the harbour was looking pretty flat, so I decided on making those pillar sections actually stick 1 block out from the rest of the harbour, which ended up fixing the flat problem pretty well. I also decided that adding some stairs on top of those pillars would look nice, and after adding those in, I think they definitely look a lot better. On the morning of day 156, I finalized the harbour by adding in some details, you know it by now, chests and barrels of course. I then worked on extending the pathway first down to the animal barn and finally over to the harbour. Next up, my wife had an amazing idea. Why don't I just disenchant my shit books to get some plain old books, which would allow me to make an enchanting table. I gave her a big kiss on the lips and got straight to doing just that. Now, of course, enchanting tables need 4 obsidian, so I headed down to the mine and mined up the pieces I needed. Returning home, I crafted up the enchanting table, something I thought I'd never get on this stinking island, and then crafted up a single bookcase along with it. Now, I just needed one more book to get a second bookshelf, so I just decided on continuing fishing until getting one and just praying that it was a shit enchantment. And well, after 2 days, we finally got our book with the shit enchantment. Thank God it didn't take any longer than that. I returned home, disenchanted the book, and crafted up the second and final bookshelf. I then decided on creating a cozy gazebo for the enchanting area, opting for this location down near the water wheel build. Starting off with the foundation for the gazebo, I went with textured stone and stone bricks, the perfect combo, and filled in the floor with just stone because I'm lazy. As for the pillars of the gazebo, I went with oak logs, followed by stone walls, oak fences, and more stone walls. As for the roof, I decided on some extinguished campfires with leaves as the main roof just to give that lush cozy vibe. Now, to make the enchanting table feel more completed, I used some chiseled bookshelves with, of course, no books inside, but I felt it worked well. I then got my ass into gear and made the floor more interesting by adding in a checkered pattern with some stone bricks. I also wanted some pots at this point and decided to go on an adventure to find some clay. I had a quick sleep out on the dock and got started exploring on day 160. And well, it didn't take very long and I instantly found some clay. I was expecting this to take a while because I'd tried to find clay a little earlier but found none, so I was kinda glad it was that easy, to be honest. After smelting the clay, I crafted some pots and sprinkled them all around the gazebo, placing various flowers inside, and they just perfectly filled the space and enhanced the lush vibe so much more. It was now time to start enchanting some tools, so I decided on crafting up some brand sparkly new ones. I enchanted the sword first, getting fire aspect to make collecting food quicker and easier as it'd cook itself. I then went with the shovel next, getting efficiency, along with enchanting my other one too to get unbreaking so I could combine them together. Next up it was the pickaxe. I decided on enchanting both again and got some decent enchantments. And finally I just did my other sword and got sharpness, which I was happy with. Heading over to the anvil, I added the Fortune 2 book to my pickaxe. I also decided on putting mending on my shovel, which was a pretty shit idea, to be honest. I also tried to combine my 2 bows together, but unfortunately I didn't have enough levels at the moment, so I'd have to do it later. Low on food, I decided to test out my new sword that'd cook the food for me, which was probably the best enchantment I'd gotten from the enchanting table. Next up, I felt the entire area around the gazebo was just a little shit, so I first worked on getting some better pathways established, first connecting the windmill to the mine, then to the portal, and the portal up to the gazebo. I then added more pathways connecting to the gazebo, along with one that leads over to the water wheel building. I also added this secondary entrance into the water wheel building, along with connecting it up to the bridge. The entire area was still just a little flat, so I placed in heaps of bushes around the place, along with bone milling the grass around to get it a little more lush. My next project was a pretty big one, another expansion to the dock, this time by adding a bunch more houses. This would need a whole goddamn heap of wood, so I worked on chopping basically the entire forest of my island down. Now with a bunch of wood obtained, I headed down to the dock to begin construction. Starting off, this first area here could fit in a house nicely, so I worked on getting a little platform built for it. After playing around a bit with the positioning, I was happy with the placement and then continued by extending the pillars up. I then added in some walls, decided they looked crap and changed them up to get a window placed in. On the back 2 walls, I added in some additional pillars and then got started on the roof, which was to consist of stone for the trim and birch for the main roof blocks. I finished it off with a cute roofed section and got straight onto the next house. This one was to be an L shape, just for something slightly different, so I figured out the position and shape along with getting all the walls, roof, and everything built up. This next one was another simple square shape, but was going to be another place that'd connect up to the mainland. I was going to make this one 2 stories tall, but I felt it'd look a bit weird and out of place. Next, I felt a crane design would fit in perfectly right here, so I did a similar design to the one up at the mine entrance to keep the island's designing consistent. Now for the final expansion, I added another pathway that branched off right next to the fishing pier, and this would lead to a bunch more houses. These are all honestly the same design, and I don't really have much to say about them, so I'm going to leave you with some bangin' old school RuneScape music. And so that's the expansion all done, except all of these houses are completely empty, so it was time to fill them up with a bit of detail. And when I say a bit, I really mean it, as I don't have a lot of resources and patience. For this first house, I connected it up to the mainland as well with a bit of a path. Now, all of these houses have the same basic interior, as I didn't want to waste too much time working on them along with the previous mentioned reasons, and I don't want to waste your time either, so they're now all completed. At this point, my axe was running dangerously low, so it was time to repair it. I crafted up a second axe and enchanted it with unbreaking just so it was a little beefier, along with combining both of them together in the anvil. On to the next project, an absolutely massive tower and the biggest single build on the island. Guess what? It needed a fuckload of wood, so that's exactly what I gathered. I also needed more food, so I killed heaps of my animals, along with gathering some more diorite and deep slate for the tower, as I wanted to use those blocks. Now, while mining deep slate, I was actually going in a straight line in hopes of finding a new cave, and thankfully I did, and it had some more diamonds for us, which was great. While looking for a spot to build the tower, I saw this dolphin stuck on the dock, so I went down to help, successfully getting it back in the water. I then decided on building the tower right here in this big open spot, and it could serve as a sort of connection between the campsite and the rest of the island by having the path go through it, which I thought would be quite cool. So beginning construction of the tower, first with the pillars. I wasn't joking when I said this would be huge. I ended up settling on 20 blocks tall. I also wanted this to have 2 roofs, one halfway up and one up at the top, of course. Working on the walls, I added in several windows and added some depth with details that run up along the pillars, along with extending the top of the tower out 1 block. Back down at the bottom, I continued those details around the sides, along with building up the walls that'd have the entrances, opting for big open arches. I extended the walls up, adding plenty of stripped oak logs for texture, along with heaps of leaves for detail. Up at the top of the tower, I added walls on every side with plenty of windows and got started on the roof, consisting of the same block palette as the barn, a diorite trim and deep slate for the main roof block. Texturing the diorite with polished diorite, along with deep slate bricks and tiles for the main roof, has got to be one of my most favorite block palettes. It just looks so clean, man. I love it. So there's the tower exterior all done. Now onto the interior. I first replaced all of the sand on the ground with some oak instead. I added a ladder that had run up to the second floor, of which I added the slabs in for. So for the second floor interior, I don't really know who would live here, maybe a wizard or something, but I just went with a generic little interior with a bedroom, some storage, and a little houseplant as well. Now finally onto the pathway, which was to connect the campsite up to everything else while running through the tower. And there we have it. The tower was all done and looking majestic as hell. Straight onto the next project, which was to add a little bit of life to the island with some custom palm trees. These of course need some bloody wood, of which I harvested. And so onto the tree designs. They're pretty easy to make, just a simple trunk 5 blocks tall, then branched 1 block forward that you place another 5 blocks on. The top leaves are very easy to make. It's a simple plus shape up at the top, and you just add 8 branches in total, making sure to add the diagonal ones in too. I ended up building a bunch of these all along the front of the island and finished it off with a slightly smaller one back at the front middle area. While I was building the tower, I noticed this spot here and felt a bit of a pond / oasis design would fit in perfectly, so I just got straight to terraforming to get the perfect shape. I then started filling it completely up with water until heading to bed and waking up on day 189. I then made the pond a little deeper in the middle, along with cracking out the bone meal to get a bunch of seagrass planted, along with removing some of it as it was slightly too much. Then to add some detail along the outside, it was onto our good old friend the bushes. I added 3 in total, all of which sprawled down into the pond for an interesting look. And that's it, the pond was all done. Now, returning home, the pond here was lacking in comparison to the one we just built, so I felt it needed a bit of an upgrade. I first worked on expanding the size so it'd be a little bit more circular in shape. Next, I simply added more bushes back in, along with using some bone meal to get the grass back, and that's it for the pond upgrade. We were now at day 190 and I still had iron armor. Checking our diamonds, we had 12 in total, and I also decided on getting some more iron because we had basically nothing. So it was time to get some mining done just before killing some innocent animals. Down in the mine, I finally found some iron, and shortly after that, some diamonds too. We had found 15 in total, and adding that to our 12 back at home meant we could finally get a full diamond armor set. But I still wanted more iron, so I continued on until finding this. Now, I was absolutely terrified. I knew nothing about the deep dark. I haven't even seen it before, so I just ran away like a baby. And so, while strip mining in the complete opposite direction, I found this. It was another deep dark area, and to say I was terrified was an understatement. It just looked so weird, and I wanted to have a look in the water, so I jumped in, and oh my god, look at that. That is absolutely terrifying. I got back as quick as I could and decided that was enough mining down at the deep slate layer. So after a full day of mining, I'd finally found some more iron, which was a sight for sore eyes. My pickaxe was also almost broken, so I just decided to head back home to repair it. So I crafted up another pick along with crafting all my diamond armor until realizing I was now 2 diamonds short. I had to head back down to the scary deep slate layer, which I really didn't want to do. Thankfully, after digging in the complete opposite direction again, I quickly found more diamonds, meaning I could head back to the safety of the stone layer. After mining for ages, I finally found more iron. Like, just look at how far this tunnel goes, man. I swear this island is cursed for iron. A couple more seconds of mining later, I actually found another thick patch. Maybe my luck was actually turning around. About a minute later, I found even more iron, which was just, oh man, it was perfect. But then this happened. That's right, I hit the iron jackpot. This underwater cave was absolutely filled to the brim with iron. I was gonna record me mining every single patch, but I just gave up because there was so much. In the end, I'd mined almost 4 stacks, which was absolutely insane. I was so happy at this moment because there was also an easy exit out into the ocean and my island wasn't too far away either. So now with enough diamonds, I made my final piece of armor, the legs. I also had plenty of levels, so it was time to enchant everything, and I ended up getting some pretty decent ones on each piece, except for the helmet because I ran out of levels. I ran back home and collected the iron in my furnaces, which got me to the level I needed, so I ran back and enchanted my helmet, the last piece. And there we have it, fully enchanted diamond tools and armor, something I never thought would happen here on the island. Wasting no time, I got straight into the next project, an expansion to the harbour we built earlier. It definitely feels pretty small, so I decided expanding up the side of the island would make it look a little bit better. So for the first section, I raised it up higher and further out into the water to match the land with the animals. I continued adding the sticking out pillars as well, as they add a lot of depth to the build. Continuing further down, I lowered the harbour again to match the land, along with shaping the next segments to the land, further bringing it inwards. I finished off the final segment along with shaping up the land slightly to give more room on the harbour, along with adding all the details to the pillars. I also worked on replacing the existing torches with lanterns, along with adding more lanterns further along the expansion. Once that was done, I added a little staircase on each side of the raised section to make traversing the harbour a little bit easier. Once those were done, I finished up the harbour by adding more detail blocks with plenty of barrels and chests. Next up for the harbour, I wanted to add some areas that you could walk onto easily and park boats at, so I added these sticking out dock segments to a couple of the sections along the harbour. I also, for some reason, decided on adding a little secret room under the tall part of the harbour because why not, I guess. I fully cleaned up the interior along with replacing the walls and ceiling with stone and stone bricks. I then decided on making this a sort of hobo den or something, basically just a little place someone's been living in. I added heaps of random decorations throughout the room, and it was all done. Now, with only 3 days left, I just decided to spend this remaining time polishing up the island, with my first idea being to add some big rocks along the sandy portion of the island. I added heaps of these consisting of andesite and stone, along with a decent amount of buttons stacked as small stones. I definitely think this was a nice little upgrade to the island. With all the iron I had meant I could make a lot of lanterns, so what I did next was simply go around to a bunch of builds and add them where they were needed. Heading down to the pier, I decided on adding some extra details around the pillars here just because I felt they were lacking a little bit. After the upgrade, it's looking much nicer. I had a sleep under the stars and we were now on the final day, day 199. Starting off, I continued replacing a bunch of the torches around the island with lanterns just because they look so much nicer in my opinion. I did leave the lighting on the dock as torches, mainly because I feel they fit that beachy vibe a little better. Next, I decided to fix this pathway here that runs alongside the barn and up to the blacksmith, just simply making it 2 blocks wide. I then spotted this little farm that we actually built back on like day 5 that was also partially destroyed by a creeper, so I just decided on fixing it up and expanding it a bit to fit the landscape. I also found plenty of spots that were bare with grass, so I just went around with some bone meal and added a bunch in where I saw it fit. And to finish up the final day, I again continued going around and upgrading a bunch of torches into lanterns, and with the sun setting on the final day, I headed down to my dock to have a sleep and awoke on day 200. Alright, and well, there we have it. The 200-day challenge is now fully completed, and I'm going to take you on another quick little tour of the entire island now. I won't bother showing all of the old builds, I'll just show all the new stuff, starting with the barn here. Definitely one of my favorites in the upgrade category. We basically just had a boring old pen, and yeah, this was a much-needed upgrade and turned out very nice. Although it is lacking a little bit of depth in this front here. I tried to go with like kind of that flat vibe, but I don't know, it just, yeah, I feel like I probably could have done more, but yeah, you know, it looks alright. Oh my Jesus Christ, that scared me. Do you actually have anything good? Man, you know what time it is for you, buddy. Get out of here, you ugly mongrel bastards. Alright, we've got the harbour and the boat as well. Definitely turned out very nice, of course, because, you know, I was following a reference of a build I've done before, although slightly a different block palette. But yeah, I think it's definitely a nice little addition to our island off on the side here. Definitely fits the vibe pretty well as well, and along with the harbour too. I'm not really happy with, you know, this top part and how it goes up so high, but I just kind of had to do that to conform to the, you know, land here. And plus the boat was already so close, I couldn't really go down and further out or else it'd touch the boat, you know? Moving over to the dock expansion. Definitely a very nice upgrade down here on the water. I just felt it definitely needed it. Along with the pier as well, it was just a very nice place to fish in, I will say. Especially after those little upgrades that we did to it, just makes it look way nicer. We got Frank down here in the boat as well, still chilling out. I'm kind of worried about destroying this and freeing him. I don't want him to drown or something, so he can just kind of stay there, you know? We had a little crane down here as well, which turned out really nice, mainly because, you know, it's the same design as the other one over at the mine. Heading up here, we've got the big old tower. Dude, this thing turned out so cool. I love this thing. I love that it serves as a nice little walkway between the campsite and the rest of the island as well. This whole village here remains pretty much unchanged except for adding lanterns around. But we also have this addition of my first ever diagonal house, which turned out really nice. And this serves as kind of like the main, like, massive farming house that would control like a lot of this farming area. And then back over here, we have the main kind of final builds. We've got the gazebo enchanting area, really cool. I wish we could get more bookshelves than just those two, but you know, we're working with what we got. And then we also have the water wheel too. Again, just a really cool build. Obviously, it doesn't really serve any kind of purpose as with most of these builds, but I think it turned out really nice, especially the interior here. I love this. So yeah, that's just about gonna do it for surviving 200 days on this deserted island. If you want to download this entire thing, whether that be day 0, day 100, or day 200, the download is available on my Patreon. I've also started a brand new hardcore survival series, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.